So I thought I would do just a video just on 5 famous people that you may not have realized carried the Luger pistol. If you watch a lot of World War II movies, you always see like the typical German officer general who's carrying a Luger. And of course that did happen, but the Luger is a pretty bulky pistol with its holster. So a lot of German generals or German officers seem to also have preferred carrying smaller pistols like the PP, or mostly the PPK, the Sauer 38H, like the SS General Dietrich. There's many other more obscure little pistols like the CZ-27, things like that. But here's 5 famous people you may not have realized carried the German Luger, or Luger in general. The first German general who was killed in Normandy was the Wilhelm Folly. He's the commander of the 91st Air Landing Division, and he was on his way to his headquarters, and he was ambushed by a mixed group of paratroopers, mostly from the 82nd Airborne, and he was thrown out of his car, and he was crawling towards his Luger, and a paratrooper officer, I think from the 507th or the 508th PIR, I can't remember, of the 82nd Airborne, shot him in the head with his 1911, and he mentioned that the blood spurted out like 6 feet like a fountain. So that was one guy, Wilhelm Folly. And another one, Theodor Tolsdorf. You may have heard of this guy. He commanded a regiment in the 1st Infantry Division early in the war. Then he commanded an eponymous mobile group when the city of Vilnius was surrounded by the Soviets in 1944. In the summer of 1944, his group tried to break into the city and lift the siege. And later in the war, he commanded the 84th German Army Corps. And supposedly, Babe Heffron ended up with his Luger at the end of the war. Or I don't know what's become of it now, but that's the story. But he did have a Luger as well. Another famous German general, Erich Brandenberger, he commanded the 8th Panzer Division in Army Group North at the beginning of the war, or at Operation Barbarossa. And then later on, he commanded the 19th Army. The 19th Army was stationed in southern France, southeastern France, and they resisted the American and French attack called Operation Dragoon. Then you have, of course, probably the most famous was Reinhard Heydrich. Of course, I don't think I really need to introduce him, but he was I believe the title was Reichsprotector of Bohemia and Moravia, and in May 1942, he was on his way he was traveling through Prague. He lived just outside the city, to the north of the city, and he was traveling and he was ambushed. There's been many movies made about this. And he pulled out his Luger pistol. Well, basically, one of the SOE agents stood out in front of his car with his Sten. The Sten jammed. Another guy threw a improvised grenade, and Heydrich tried to shoot him with a Luger, but he was wounded by this grenade. And then one last one. This one's pretty obscure, and this was Commander of Air Group Richard C. Merrick. During the Korean War, May 1st, 1951, there was a very improvised torpedo attack by 84 Sky Raiders from the carrier Princeton, and they were trying to destroy the Watchon Dam, I believe it's pronounced, and he led the attack. Very few people on the carrier had any experience with torpedoes. I remember reading one of the torpedo pilots had never even seen a torpedo in his life, so there was practically no training on how to do this, but they were able to destroy the dam. And so yeah, Richard C. Merrick, he carried a K2 camera and a Luger and a pair of 7x50 binoculars to observe the attack, or to lead the attack. So that's 5 people, famous, or some more than others, personalities who carried the Luger. And If you have any more information, or if you know any other famous personalities, I'd love to hear them in the comments.